Our first panelist is Kurt Johnson. He is the editor of the Interspiritual Volumes, is a member of the Interspirituality Synergy Circle of the Evolutionary Leaders who have arranged these panelogues today, and also is a co-founder of interspirituality.com. Our second panelist will be Patrick Carolan. And Kurt, if we're going in a different order, you can correct this, but this is how I have it recorded here. He is a Catholic activist and organizer whose work bridges faith and action, a former executive director of the Franciscan Action Network and co-founder of the Global Catholic Climate Movement. He draws on Franciscan spirituality to advance justice, ecological responsibility, and the interconnectedness of all life. Our next panelist is Roger Briggs. He spent his professional career in the American public schools and, since retiring, has devoted himself to the study of human evolution and working with others to advance the age of interspirituality. He can be found at planetproject.care. I will be the next panelist. I'm an Episcopal priest and animator for the B. Griffiths Trust. I'm stewarding interspiritual legacy of Benedictine hermit and sannyasin mystic, Father Bede Griffiths, also known as Swami Dayananda. Through intermonastic and interspiritual dialogues, archives, and global community building, I foster contemplative practice, universal wisdom, sacred encounter across cultural traditions, and dimensional perimeters, co-creating space where each one can see the divine union. The final panelist is Calvin Chatlos, council member of the Institute on Religion in an Age of Science, professor, Department of Psychiatry at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, and an addiction and child and adolescent psychiatrist who has enjoyed including spirituality for over 30 years in his clinical practice. He is the developer of the framework of spirituality that explores how spiritual experience is grounded in cognitive, behavioral, and neuroscience with a tested method to intentionally promote spiritual mystical awakening. So I turn it over to Kurt, and here we go.
Okay, so thank you so much, and thanks for everybody for joining us. So what I'm going to do is simply open by saying some comments about the interspiritual volumes themselves and how they were put together. And because everyone that you're going to be hearing from today are one of the 120 authors that are in the spiritual volumes. And of course, the volumes themselves are dedicated to those 120 contributors without their materials, actually, the books wouldn't have been possible. And this actually was a 4.5-year project by the Light on Light team, and I'll be acknowledging them also when I wrap up here. And it started with the commitment on the 25th anniversary of Wayne Teasdale's iconic book, which actually gave the name Interspirituality to the Paradigm. That book now, which is so well known, The Mystic Heart, Discovering a Universal Spirituality in the World's Religions. And we really felt deeply that if we didn't take the opportunity on that 25th anniversary to get out this history at this time, it might simply be lost. And of course, Brother Wayne's work was founded upon the shoulders of his two spiritual mentors and spiritual fathers, which were, of course, Father Bede Griffiths, that Matt's just talked about, and Father Thomas Keating, from whose work, of course, we received the 9 points of agreement across the world's religions, and then through Brother Wayne, the 9 elements of a universal spirituality. So we actually started with the plan to do 1 volume, and then, as Matthew Fox says in his foreword to the books, we had over 100 people come into the project, and suddenly then it became 2 volumes. And actually then we've had so many contributions, which included electronic links and photographs all kinds of memorabilia. We're actually going to be doing a third volume in 2026, which will be an e-volume, which will wrap together particularly much more about interspiritual communities, at a global level. So the last step we had then was to tie the ribbons on the front and backs of the volumes, which of course we were so privileged to have Matthew Fox write the foreword. He's actually of the five people in the history of this paradigm who gave it a name, and Matthew's was deep ecumenism, as he said in his keynote. He's actually the only one who is still with us on the planet now. So it was so fitting that he would write the foreword. And then we tied it up at the end with the messaging from Ken Wilber on waking up, growing up, showing up, cleaning up, opening up, linking up, and lifting up, which pretty much tells the whole story of the transformative path of interspirituality. And then, of course, arranging the opening message from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And that was so appropriate because the Dalai Lama had written the foreword to Wayne's original book in 1999. And that was arranged for us by our beloved friend Olivia Hanson at Spiritual Life TV, who's one of the co-sponsors of the symposium today. So the last step then was curating the volumes, and I just have to say that took a lot of listening by our team and was quite an adventure. So then when we started asking the questions, oh my gosh, what type of programming could come out of this? We started looking at the symposium today. We actually had responses right away from 10 different major interfaith and interspiritual organizations that make up the 5 panels today, 5 of them hosting members from their own organization, and then this panel, which is hosting members of 5 different organizations. And the last thing I'll say then is that also then in April and May, the Center for World Religions and Peace at Edinburgh will be also hosting a 2-day symposium on the volumes, devoting a day to each volume. And as we go through the symposium today, I'll be putting things into the chat that will allow you to find the volumes, to find the newsletters that I'll be announcing all of these upcoming programs. So it's an exciting day. Thank you for being here. And I think I move now to our next panelist, which is Matthew Cobb, who wrote an amazing article in the spiritual volumes on lineages. So over now to Matt Cobb again.
Okay. Thank you, Kurt. And I'm really happy to be in this crowd that we're in today. And I was just looking into the volume 1, the heritage, and I guess I overlooked it, but I occur right after Wayne's cosmic blessing in this volume, Kurt. And wow, to be following him is um, I just want to take the dust from under his feet at this moment and just be there, um, to know that that cosmic blessing is coming through all of us through spoken word. I wrote a piece in this volume that was um, from my experience of learning the language of the Anishinaabe. You might know them as the Chippewa or the Ojibwe people. I was working on the reservations in northern Minnesota, and I live in Minnesota, Makoche right now, and I'm coming to you from the lands of the Dakota that were never unceded, here in downtown Minneapolis, in a little place called Loring Park, which is the original homestead. I'm looking out my window of that white settler that came here. And so I am also aware of this place that I'm looking out to as the tundra. There's a forestry professor from University of Minnesota that has come and walked us through our park here and has shown us signs of species that are still here from the tundra, which is before the Wisconsin Glacier receded. So we're talking deep time, deep ecumenism, and the spoken word. And so what I want to share with you all today, why I chose spoken word as the way to present my understanding of interspirituality over the years, is because the Abba experience of Jesus in John's gospel is literally spoken word, but only one word. And that one word was yes, yes, who, ah. And I know Matthew Fox is here, and we have to say, I have to say, we all the way home. I want to take the dust from under your feet. Because what happens in spoken word is that you find a verse and then you have a verse spoken on another verse, but really it's only one word that you're seeking with your heart. You're seeking that truth that comes from that one word. And so I am privileged to introduce the person that follows me in this line that we are spinning together in this synergy circle that is interspirituality. I feel like this spoken word is something that we've all truly witnessed and been surprised by in our lives. We don't have to have a near-death experience. We don't have to have a close encounter or mystical religious experience in order to commit ourselves to living life and experiencing this life. And so I think we're at that point where we're spiraling up in this symposium and we're trying to really seek truth through beauty. And so that's where I'm going to land today with you all. And I'll share this icon that's behind me because it is written by my daughter, who's a tattooist here in Minneapolis. And we are having a conversation about this spiraling up that happens today. And the conversation went to how we pray. And when we pray on the land, we pray with tobacco. And so when that smoke goes up, or that medicine of the sage or the sweetgrass or the cedar, whatever medicine you're using to pray on this land, when it goes up just like this, spiraling up. And then you can watch it go into the roots, and you can go into the roots, and behind the roots are all our ancestors, all the celestials, all those who are looking and watching over us all the time. And so we can do cross-cultural and we can do cross-temporal work together here in a manner that I think will allow us to experience this life and live this life to the full. I think that's happening through one word at a time. And so my one word is over, and I'll pass it on to our next panelist, and that is
Patrick.
Patrick, Patrick Corlan.
Thank you. Thank you. It's Carolan, by the way.
Carolyn.
Yes, no problem. Um, so thank you. I'm blessed and honored to be here also with this austere group of people and also to have been part of Kurt's book. I remember a couple of years ago when I got an email from Kurt asking me if I would write an essay on it, and I did, and I totally forgot about it. And then about a couple of months ago, Kurt sent me a note saying, well, the book's coming out with your essay in it. I'm an activist. And so I look at the world from the standpoint of an activist. I'm as likely to be getting arrested in Washington, D.C., protesting, or going on a 15-day hunger strike sitting on a mall in Washington, D.C., which I actually did, as I am to be going to church or preaching or anything like that. But I came to an understanding several years ago that my activism had to be based on my concept of my spirituality. It had to be based on the understanding of the oneness of all of us, and that our activism couldn't be political, it had to be transformative. And if we weren't really working in a way that's transformative, we weren't really doing anything. The understanding of interspirituality isn't the new concept. It didn't just come up with Brother Teasdale or others. If you go back 3,000 years ago and read some ancient Hindu texts, it talks about interspirituality, it talks about the oneness of all of us. 800 years ago, St. Francis of Assisi, who, I believe one of the most misunderstood, one of the most revered saints, but one of the most misunderstood. He's, often understood as the bird bath saint, when that has no concept of who he really is. But St. Francis of Assisi understood the idea of the oneness of all creation. A few years after St. Francis, there was a Franciscan scholar and theologian, philosopher, John Duns Scotus, who wrote what he called the univocity of being, the understanding of the uniqueness of each part of creation coming together to form the oneness of all creation. What's interesting about that is that a few years before he wrote that, there was a Sufi mystic, Ibn al-Farid, who wrote what he called the unity of being. If you read both of these concepts, they're almost identical. And they talk again about the oneness of all creation, the oneness of each of us. And so if we're going to talk about interspirituality, we're not talking about it as something brand new just happening that we're creating. We're going back, reimagining our spirituality. We even have to look at some of our indigenous cultures, the Aboriginals, the first people in the Americas, even my own Aboriginal, my own indigenous culture, the Celtic. They all believed in the oneness of creation and the oneness of us and the earth and the interconnectedness of all of us. So, for me, interspirituality is about being connected to everything and to everybody. And again, one last thing I'll say is, and this more for Christianity than, but also for other religions, the idea that our whole Christian faith is based on a theology that our whole purpose here is to get to there, wherever there is. You know, I often ask the question, do you think Jesus came with a building plan or an evacuation plan? Because all of our theology is centered around an evacuation plan, and everything Jesus taught us is about building, creating the kingdom of heaven here, now. So I'll leave it on that note, and I'll just leave it with one last thing that Thomas Berry wrote. And Thomas Berry, as you all know, was one of the founders of the eco spirituality movement, but he also was a founder in the interspirituality. And he said, "We go forth with a singular spirituality, or we'll perish in the desert." And he wasn't talking about whether we worship on Friday night or Saturday afternoon or Sunday morning. He wasn't talking about how we hold our hands or what name we use for God. He was talking about our understanding and our belief in the oneness and the interconnectedness of all creation. So peace and all good, and thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Patrick. Now over to Roger Briggs. Welcome in, Roger. Good to see you. Click your mute microphone button. Thank you.
That does help. Thanks, Matthew. Great to be here with all of you, and I'm really honored to be here today and also to be invited by Kurt to submit a piece to the Inner Spiritual Volumes. My contribution is a piece called A Meta Framework for Human Evolution. I also like to call this framework the Gebser Donald Eisler framework because it draws on the work of all three of these intellectual giants, mostly working in the 20th century. And this question of human evolution, I've been chasing it for about 20 years and just fascinated with the phenomenon of humans, as Teilhard de Chardin also pursued. And it all begins 3 or 3.5 million years ago when our ancestors first started manufacturing stone tools and passing along this knowledge and innovating, and this eventually became our cell phones and nuclear weapons and all the tools that we have today. And this meta framework, based on the synthesis of the work of these three, um, traces 5 distinct stages that humans, or our ancestors, I should say, have gone through, culminating with the fourth and fifth being our current stage, and the fifth being, in this context, the coming age of interspirituality. So each of these stages we can see in the archaeological record, and I tie this also into the latest findings in paleoanthropology, many very recent findings that demonstrate that there have been four and now a fifth great transition, evolutionary transition that has occurred, often accompanied by very stressful events, if not extinction, near extinction events. And I don't have time to trace through all of these, but if we fast forward to the work of Rion Eisler and the fourth great transition, which we can date to beginning around 10,000 years ago when humans were moving away from the hunter-gatherer nomadic lifestyle that had been lived for millions of years into sedentary living and agriculture. And the early settlements in proto-cities were peaceful, partnership cultures where men and women worked together. There was no war. And then, as Rian so stunningly reveals in her book, The Chalice and the Blade, around 5,000 years ago, there was a complete change with the emergence of the first the first civilization, as we call it, with cities with walls and weaponry. We see palaces and temples that had to be built by slaves, which means there was someone in charge, some guy at the top. And yes, it was a guy because this was the advent of patriarchal power structures. And Rion coined this term, the domination culture or domination systems, for this hierarchical, the hierarchical societies where people are ranked. And the stunning thing is that this has continued for 5,000 years, and this is exactly where we are at today. And the events of today, I think, are the last gasps of the domination culture. Um, what happened 5,000 years ago also was where women were placed into a second-class position. And that has remained the same all the way through the witchcraft trials and all the ways that women have been secondary. Um, so today we're on the cusp of this fifth great transition, and many people have recognized it, indigenous people and philosophers and scholars. And Kurt Johnson has called it the coming interspiritual age, building on the work of Wayne Teasdale and so many others. And this is really the time of coming together, and interspirituality is really about recognizing the oneness and the unity of all the wisdom traditions and all of the interconnectedness. Rion calls it the partnership culture, based on caring and love and interconnectedness. So part of the theme of spirituality is it's all one, really. When you drill down, we're all saying the same thing. And so um, all of us are called, all of us have this vision, all of us are working together to usher in this new age, whether we call it the unitive consciousness, the planetary consciousness, the integral consciousness, as Jean Gebser called it, or the interspiritual consciousness. So that's our work, as Matthew Fox reminded us, that we're here to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Roger. Now over to Dr. Calvin Chatlos. Dr. Calvin, can you unmute and join us? Welcome, welcome.
There, I am here. So thank you for the introduction. And it is an honor to be here. But from the beginning, I'll be honest, I'm not last because I'm best, but that I actually had the least contribution to the volume. However, the least contribution was because it was the latest knowledge before publication that Kurt sort of allowed me to get in, and I'll place it here as an opportune next step to build a future. I represent the Institute on Religion in an Age of Science, and their conference in June of 2025 on Star Island, New Hampshire, titled Spiritual Experience, a Scientific, Philosophical, and Theological Retreat, brought together multiple disciplines to discuss spiritual experience. The premise then and now is that our current worldview isn't working well. I don't think I have to say any more. But the IRIS conference presented a single model with a science-based moral imperative to counter today's dominance worldview. Unitive love, proposed by Jude Curran and Grant Story, is a cosmological framework for modern science and quantum for interdependent wholeness. But the framework of spirituality that was presented validates and describes how unitive love is organized psychologically with critical keys of self-worth and dignity. The key to this knowledge is redefining dignity as the expression of honoring the worth, what we honor most about being human, when we honor reason, compassion, and courage, not any one, but all three, to heal the injury to self-worth. We pierce the veil of illusion to open spiritual awareness with mystical characteristics. That opening to new awareness is unitive love, but not just love as a feeling or emotion, but the agape, unconditional healing love. And what's great, it is not just love that opens up. Unitive love includes a moral compass, neurobiologically embodied, and opens to faith, an indomitable faith grounded in science and coherence, faith in self, others, the world, and the beauty, truth, and goodness of the universe. This is the functional soul of each person and the greater soul of humanity. Love, truth, and faith are the gifts of the universe open to all. Our world has lost faith. It injures souls and has not yet learned to benefit from the firepower of love. And I'll quote Teilhard de Chardin. I love this quote. The day will come when, after harnessing space, the winds, the tides, gravitation, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And on that day, for the second time in the history of the world, man will have discovered fire. This framework provides a future worldview with a moral imperative, undisputed connection of science to spiritual experience. The goal is self and relationships with the world and nature. Dignity, honor opens us to the holy and the sacred in life. The moral truth force informs us that nonviolent cooperation is key to human flourishing, and love, not just a feeling, the ecstatic experience of harmony and coherence with principles of human nature and the universe. It is being home. This is home for all, secular and religious. And this is what inner spirituality is all about, that I think we're going to talk about. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Oh, wonderful. I am going to shift gears into a demonstration of what five older white guys that are way too educated can do when they let go of the um, possibility that there is any outcome from this. So we're going to let go of all the outcomes, and we're going to pretend that St. Thomas Aquinas is here with us right now, saying everything we've done in our life work is straw. And we'll pick up Plato's dialogue and understand we're seeking truth in our dialogue here with the five of us, but we're in a symposium, which in my reading of Plato's Symposium is about seeking beauty. And so in the midst of our dialogue, seeking truth from each other's heart to find that light within the darkness, what is it that strikes you all as an overwhelming love? Like the stroke that B. Griffiths had on January 25th, many, many years ago. And he was awakened to the possibility that he was surrendering to the mother. And everything came to him in this sense of overwhelming love. Gentlemen, can we speak to that just for a few short minutes?
Well, I'll certainly say that the interspiritual volumes themselves were a labor of love, was one of the reviews that says that. And I'm just so happy that everyone who's joined us in these 3 days, and especially today. So saying that, that's love itself, sending hearts, and turn it over to the other people. We have just a few minutes left, and we're doing really well.
I was curious, Calvin, because you have some ways of going about this unitive love within science and also within religion. In that gap, have you found the collapse of hard dichotomies and maybe the emergence of just distinguishing between a person's experience of overwhelming love within your own practice?
Yeah. And the work we've done really connects science with spiritual experience. That when we psychologically understand how it's wired into us, what was amazing in my work was that it ended up all coming down to unitive love. So when I just recently heard about the soul and the science of unitive love, I said, oh my God, they've already developed what I've got something to validate. So, and the joy in my work, Matthew, is to see that love open up. As soon as people get rid of the hurt, they connect with their self love, and it's just beautiful. Um, I mean, that's what we're trying to open up, that resonance with where we're supposed to be.
And somehow your own coherence and congruency with your own environs allows that person to step into that with you. Roger, what if you
And it requires others to open
ah
it up.
and Roger, I'm curious if we could step back to the upper Paleolithic and see this kind of realization within an upper Paleolithic relative. That's an imaginary move, imaginal move into the transjective here. But could you imagine having a conversation right now with an upper Paleolithic relative?
Yeah, well, the Upper Paleolithic came about 60,000 years ago. This was one of the great transitions into the spoken word, Matthew, as you talked about. Um, and this consciousness, the mythic consciousness, was very dreamlike. But this is when all the storytelling began. But to talk about the overwhelming love, I just have to say I feel so much love within the members of this panel. This whole symposium is just infused with love, love of humanity and wanting a good future humanity, a love of this planet and a love of the universe. So yeah, I'm feeling the overwhelming love.
Hmm. And I'll go over to you, Brother Patrick. Um, how are you experiencing this morning where you are in the land that you're occupying?
Well, I'm in Connecticut and we're getting ready for 2 feet of snow. So not a good question to ask, but just two thoughts that I have. One is the whole idea of the incarnation, where we believe it's about sin. We teach it's about sin when in fact it's about love.
Yes.
And love, incarnation and love go hand in hand. And every day when we love, we're being incarnated all over again. And then one last thought also is I mentioned I'm an activist, and I realized that I had to take a step back and become more contemplative. I have a lot of friends who are contemplatives, and they believe they have to take a step back and become more activists. So we have to get our activists to become contemplative and our contemplatives to become activists, and then we can start to go forward.
Wow, that sounds like a place where we can definitely begin to take another step forward and maybe walk back in repentance for everything that we've missed over the years because we've not allowed that overwhelming love to guide us. So allow our helpers, our guides, our teachers, all those people that are with us in this room right now that have crossed over to the other side to really help us get into that overwhelming love, that unitive consciousness here today. And I don't know who takes it from here, but I'm passing the baton. Thank you.